It's a good tank. Go buy one. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.
Swinging on and happy, hippie, yeah. Hippie, yeah.
What's up YouTube? Welcome back to Whacked Out eSig. This is the Bellus RTA by Youde, the same company that made the Goblin Mini. It's a rebuildable tank atomizer that holds 5 milliliters of juice. It has single or dual coil capabilities and is a really good vape. That's why I gave it that intro. Obviously there's a lot more that I want to say about it, but before that we're going to go down up close, see what comes in the box, going to take the tank apart, we're going to put a build into it, and then we'll come back and talk more about the pros and cons. So without wasting any more time, let's go do that. This is the small clamshell style iPhone case looking box that you're probably used to seeing by now for the Youde Bellus. The top comes off like that. You get your tank in there. You get a spare glass with some Japanese organic cotton in there. And then if you can get this part out, which is always a bitch to get out, then you have a little bag full of spare stuff. You get spare O-rings. This big, it's kind of an O-ring. It's more of a plug that secures the juice in place. Make sure there's no leaking or anything in the top cap. You get some extra screws in there, which is nice. I would have liked to see Allen screws as the spares instead of more Phillips head, because it comes with Phillips head installed. They should have given Allen screws so people have an option. You get some pre-made coils in there, and you also get a single coil adapter for if you want to make a single coil, and I'll show you how to do that later. On the back you have kind of the description. You get all the parts that are laid out. I'll show you them anyway. Shows you how to fill it. Pretty simple 3-step system. And then it gives these specs, I guess. Tank system, dripper flavor, debatable. 100% no leak design, debatable. Side airflow intake, 32 holes, 16 on each side. Great vapor, amazing flavor. The airflow is a bit debatable as well. We'll talk about that later. Top filling design and a 5 ml large capacity, so you can hold a good set of juice in this considering the size. Let's take a closer look at the tank. Okay, so a whole mess of parts that make up the Youde Bellus. We'll start over here with the deck. It's a small deck because it is an RTA, but it's not extremely small. You can still fit a decent build in here. As you can see, there's only 2 posts, which means that technically it is easier to build on, but there's only 2 holes as well. So if you're going to build a dual coil in this, each hole is going to take 2 leads, and that can get tough because you can't hold down both at the same time. And yes, it's kind of hard to build on, but I'll be showing you how to build it on it anyway. Up top you have the Phillips screws, which, as I said earlier, I kind of wish it came with an option to switch them out into Allen screws, but nevertheless these aren't very small. They're not bad to deal with at all. Sorry if you can hear sirens in the background. But yeah, if you notice here, there's a hole there, and it's just more like an indent. It's not an actual hole. It doesn't go anywhere. But this is the single coil adapter, and what this does is it sits right there. And this kind of Delrin or Peak, whatever this thing is, I think it's an insulator, but I really don't know if it's supposed to be there or not. It can come off, but I don't really see the point in it coming off or staying on there. If you know, you can leave a comment and let me know. But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like in single coil mode. And then when you take this, which is the coil head enclosure, I guess, you can just place it on here and it slides into there. Then you can take the airflow, and you can see here there's a whole lot of airflow here. I think it said, what, 42 holes or something like that on both sides, but that's the maximum amount of airflow you're going to get. So having all these holes doesn't make much of a difference because that's all the airflow you're really going to get on either side. This is your bottom cap. It just holds everything in place. Then you take your glass and it's press fit on there, so you just want to hold it in place while you take your chimney. You can see the top fill design there, and you just screw it into there. One thing I want to show you, if you can see it, is the spiral that's in the chimney, and they put that there so that the vapor, while it's traveling from the coil to your mouth, it kind of spirals, and I guess they think it helps with flavor, helps with vapor. We'll talk about that later, but yeah, that's the design. You fill it through there. This is a bad thing because it's tapered, so if you have a dropper that's too big for it and you squeeze it, it's gonna roll under and flow directly into your coil. So then you take your top cap and you just screw that in. That's held in place there. I showed you that plug actually earlier. That goes in there, so if that gets cut up or whatever, you have a spare one. That screws on there. Then your drip tip as well, you get that spiral effect, if you can see that. And it just slides in there. It is a 510 drip tip, but that's what it looks like all put together. So let's get a build into this. Okay, to do this particular build tutorial, you're going to need some 26 gauge can't thaw wire, wire cutters, something to wrap your coils around. I'm using the Coil Master V3, the 2.5mm rod. You're going to need a screwdriver, and you can either use a Phillips head because that's the screws that it uses, but I like to use a very small flat head just to make sure it's not going to strip the screws. And then finally a pair of scissors. First step, cut yourself about a foot of the 26 gauge can't thaw wire and cut it in half. Next up, use your Coil Master or whatever you're using to wrap 8 times around the rod. Okay, so once you have your coil all wrapped up, we're just going to install it right into the post. It fits in very easily. With a single coil, it's very simple because you're only using 2 leads, so 2 posts is the perfect size. And we're going to keep a single coil here for now. But if you're making a single coil, you don't want to install the single coil adapter just yet, and that will be obvious in a second. So we're just going to use this pole here to hold the coil in place, and we're going to tighten down our leads. And you want it nice and tight. I haven't had any problems with the leads being cut by the screws or anything as yet, so that's a good sign. And we're just going to play around with it, pull it down so it's, you know, a decent height above that deck, but it's not touching. You want it close but not touching. And then this, you could either cut them, but since these are going to be held in place quite well, we can just spin them around and they'll pop out just like that. That will make it a lot more flush with the post. And this one's a bit small, so I can use the tweezers. Maybe cut your leads longer so that you don't have this trouble. But yeah, the reason we want them as flush as possible is because the single coil adapter, when it goes in, you don't want it to be blocked. Oops. You don't want it to be blocked by the wires, right? So there we go. Installed all nice. Let's check the resistance. I'm going to guess around 0.8. That's a complete guess, so we'll see. 0.95. Oh, 0.84. Okay, 0.8. And it's jumping all over the place. So what we're going to do is tighten down the wires a bit more. You can see that backed out when I was pulling it apart. Take our rod, kind of play around with it, make sure it's centered in place. Fire it, and we're going to need to play around with this quite a bit. And now I've got a good grip on it. It looks a lot better. And it should be firing from the inside out. It's a bit wonky right now, but we'll keep playing around with it, pulsing till it's hot, and while it's cooling down, we're just going to grab it, hold it in place. We can do this brushing, and that normally helps quite a bit, and it's looking pretty good right now. So let's check the resistance. 0.95, that's going to be okay, I'm hoping. Never built a single coil on this before, but we'll see how it goes. I have my Japanese organic cotton, and I'll just cut a decent sized strip. It's only 2.5 millimeters, the coil, so you don't want it too big, but you want it maybe around 3.5 millimeters. And if this is your first time, you'll get used to eyeing how much cotton you need. Gonna roll it into a cylindrical shape. I mention this all the time. Wash your hands before dealing with cotton, because any oil that's on your hand or anything that's on your hand is gonna make its way into that cotton, and you're not gonna want to taste that. So we'll pull this through. You want it to be tight, you want some resistance, but you don't want it to the point where it's moving the coil when you pull it. What I'm going to do next is just this is kind of tricky. So I want to hold it upright like that so it cuts diagonally like that, but I want it relatively close to the deck. So that should be okay. This side, do the same thing. It's a lot tougher on this side. What I can actually do is take it off the mod for this. That way there's a lot more space for my scissors to go. So right up against the deck, cut diagonally, and there we go. So I'm gonna wet this up, and then we're going to put the cotton in place. Okay, the juice I'm using is Lane Cove Vapor. The flavor is Nola. You can kind of see that there. Pavlova meringue topped with whipped cream, strawberries, kiwis, and passion fruit. This is one of my favorites, and you can also get it from Hazetown Vape, so I figured why not. Pop it in the review as well. So we're gonna just wet the cotton, and we're doing this so that we can move it around, manipulate it so that it will take the shape and position of wherever we want it to go. And for this particular one, and pretty much every RTA, I like to push in the back onto the deck and then just kind of fit that cotton into there. You don't want too much, and if you look here, you kind of want it to separate out. But I also brush up the top, so it takes a bit of time depending on how much cotton you have in there, but there's a little lip as well. If you can see on this side, that lip, you want the cotton to be kind of on that lip and not much coming down past it. If it does, like how it is there, it's only a couple strands and it's not gonna be a big deal. So again, push the back end onto the deck and up against the coil. Pushing it up against the coil will prevent dry hits. And there we go. So it's firing amazingly. That's because it's at 5.42 volts right now, 31 watts on a 0.95 ohm coil. It's looking pretty good. So the next step is very simple. You're going to want to line up that airflow hole, and this notch on the bottom, you want to line that up with this notch on the bottom of the deck. And that just pops right into place, and then you can see your coil in there. You can move it around and just get it right into place. And that's why this is considered an RDTA, a rebuildable dripping tank atomizer, because like a dripper, the airflow is going directly into and across the coil instead of going from underneath a different chamber and everything. So that's why they say the flavor is much better. And you can see on this side, it's blocked off with that adapter that we use. So yeah, we're going to take this off now and take the airflow, put it right on top, take the bottom cap, and just screw that into place. And there we go, we're ready to fill it. So the top part comes off. And this is where it helps to have a very skinny dropper top. Good thing I chose this liquid because it just fits in there very easily. If you had a large dropper top, like I mentioned earlier, it could over drip and then just run directly down into the coil area because it's tapered down like that. So we just squeeze and it fills up. 5 mils of juice, very simply. And the reason that there's a hole there and a hole there is so that while you're filling this, if it's kind of blocked up, no air can escape. This is so that the air can escape and it doesn't kind of just over flood with all the pressure. So it would have helped as well to close off the airflow, but I didn't do that. And this is where people say they get leaking, but as you can see, no leaking. So, and some bubbles coming up, that's what we want to see. Let's go ahead and vape it. So, like I said, it's a good tank. My question about this tank was, is it better than the Goblin Mini? Size-wise, it's bigger. Obviously, the Goblin Mini, I don't think there's any tank this size that is as good as this tank on the market at all, but this does hold a lot more juice. It holds 5 mils of juice instead of 3 or 3.5, whatever that was. But it's not perfect. There are some things that I don't really like about it. But let's start with the build quality of the thing. So the entire thing is made very well. We'll start with the drip tip. This rifle kind of design that's in there, I thought it was a gimmick, and it's not really. I mean, it does make a difference to the quality of vape that you get, but I'm not sure if it makes it any better. I notice it more with a dual coil than a single like I have in here, but with a dual coil I do notice that it kind of feels like the vapor is more concentrated when it's coming out of the drip tip, and that could either be from the fact that they have that rifle situation going on, or it could be that the airflow is just restricted and that's why it feels more concentrated. Either way, the concentrated vape means very good flavor, which I do like about this tank. The airflow is very easy to twist. It's not going to move by itself, but it's tight enough that you know it's twisting and it's going to stick into place, which is nice. The whole idea of having all this airflow on the outside doesn't make much sense considering you only have those small holes for airflow, but doesn't really matter to me because it has enough airflow for me. I can take a restricted lung hit, or I can close this off. And what it say, 42 holes in all. So I'll close this down, not using 21.5 or 20.5. This is half a hole open. And it's a really, really good mouth to lung. I was not expecting that at all, considering this is made for lung hits, right? It's a lung hitting device. It's made to hold quite a bit of power compared to other lung hits. But with that said, with a single coil in here, I'll show you the cloud I get off of this. That's at 14 watts, and I can bring it up. Let's try 18 watts on this 0.94 ohm coil. Just as good. The flavor is not really getting any better or worse as I increase the wattage. This is 20 watts. And no dry hit. I've noticed that I haven't got any dry hits off of this. At times, if I chain vape it, it seems like it's about to go dry, but I hit it right after that and it still doesn't go dry. So I've been really impressed with the wicking on this. And considering it wicks so well, it doesn't leak, right? Now the reason I said that the leak-proof design in the beginning is debatable is because I've seen a lot of reviews of people saying that when they fill it, since there's no actual juice flow control to close it off, that when you open the top cap to fill it, it does leak. mine has never leaked on me. The most it's gotten to is I fill it, close the cap, take a vape, and it's kind of gurgly, but after one hit, all that excess juice just burns off and it doesn't leak. So I don't know what people are talking about. It doesn't leak for me. I guess if you follow the simple tutorial that I did, it's not going to leak for you either. But okay, let's talk about the deck. Now, the deck is replaceable, so I think some of these problems can be fixed. I think they should release a deck that, for dual coil, it has 4 holes instead of 2 holes. Because a 2-hole deck, building dual coil is difficult. For a single coil, it's perfect. There's nothing easier than putting a single coil into 2 holes, right? But for a dual coil, if you have to share a hole with 2 leads, it's troublesome. It's really annoying to build on, and it still works. It still vapes well with dual coil, but just for building and ease of use, I think they should release a velocity style deck at least. Maybe they can come up with something even better. I don't know, but for now, I prefer this in single coil just for the fact that it's easier to build on. I can vape at 20 watts, not go through a shit ton of juice, keep my battery life relatively long, at least about a day, and still get a really good flavorful and warm vape. Now let's talk about the price, okay? This costs $42.99, around the same price as the Goblin Mini. I think that's a really good price for what you're getting, considering the deck is replaceable, so if something better comes out in the future, they can just release it and you can buy that instead of buying a whole new tank. I love the system. It's the same kind of system of having upgradable firmware on a mod, right? You don't have to be continually spending money on new devices. You can just buy the parts and replace them. So I think that's a really good option. I think the price is really good. You can pick this up from Hazetown Vapes. That's who sent it to me for $42.99. And if you use the Whacked Out coupon, that will be in the description along with the link, you can get 15% off until the end of December 2015. So definitely worth a try. You can also get the Laneco Vapor and the Plumes of Hazard juice that I will be reviewing tomorrow. So big thanks to Hazetown Vapes for sending all this amazing stuff. Not only for sending it, but for actually stocking really good stuff and having it available in Canada and Toronto for us to vape and enjoy. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.